Hey everyone, thank you very much for joining us today. It's great to be with you, and I'm excited to be joined by our Head of Global Research at Lightcast, Elena Magrini. I am Andy Durman, EVP of our Global Division, and today we're going to be talking about some exciting collaborations we've been doing over many years with various researchers and thinkers in the field of labour market information. So we're very excited to dive into a few of our examples there and to share those with you as we go. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat, and our little Lightcast minions will be there on hand to try and help you answer any questions as we go through the topic in today. And anything that we can't answer real time during the session, we'll endeavour to come back to you on as we go forward. So thank you very much for joining us today. So we are going to be talking today about a collection of research that we've pulled together and we've recently published that really kind of showcases ways in which some great minds beyond our own, Eleanor, have been taking the wealth of labour market insight that we collate and brought them to some really quite thought-provoking and pressing agendas and questions as it relates to the world of work around the world. And so very excited to showcase a few examples and point you towards some resources that we have available to you. So before we dive into the global research collaboration summary that we're going to run through today, let me kick off just quickly by telling you a little bit about Lightcast. If you're new to Lightcast, you're very welcome along. And forgive me if you're a regular watcher, listener of these, but I'll continue the indoctrination anyway. So here at Lightcast, we're on a really quite an important mission, we feel, which is about unlocking new possibilities in the labour market. But that's a mission that we don't own ourselves. That's a mission we share with you and a community. And the research collaborations actually are a really great example of how we're working collaboratively to unlock this mission. The world of work is a very complex, fast-moving world. It's foundational to our economies. It's important to our lives and societies. And so, we want to do our bit at Lightcast to really help economies function more effectively, labour markets work more effectively. And our true belief is that happens when we can only really happens when we can possibly truly understand what is actually happening in the world of work. And so our job is to illuminate the specifics of how work is changing and trending, and bringing that to a range of key stakeholders, many of which include yourselves watching along today. So working with education providers as we help to really understand what the current and future needs of the labour market look like, so we can make sure education provision is aligned to skills need. We do a lot of work across economic development and governments, where of course skills policy and economic policy needs to be founded in good detailed knowledge about what's happening in the labour market. And a lot of that is ultimately driven with companies and employers in mind. And we do a lot of work engaging some of the world's leading companies who employ thousands of people around the world to really understand where are those talent pools that they're seeking to engage with. How do they ensure that their workforce aligns to how their business is evolving? And so at the heart of all of this is an understanding of just what is actually happening out there in the labour market. So we do that a number of ways, pulling together insights from a whole range of different sources, ranging from government statistics that help us understand the structural building blocks to labour markets, through to mining big data sources like online job postings and professional profiles that help us dig deeper into hiring activity and education and work, and deliver that through to our users through software services, through data integrations, and also applied research. And Eleanor, chance to introduce you properly now. You lead a lot of the work we do around the applied research, both in terms of projects we do for specific clients, but also helping our customers to to leverage the data in their own applied research. So thank you very much for joining me today and joining us today. And we're going to together dive into a few examples of that kind of work, and hopefully illuminate just some of the interesting findings that some of our research community using our data have been able to unlock. That's driving real change as we think about how we plan for a changing world of work. And so a lot of this is actually rooted in a lot of our history at Lightcast. Some of you may be very familiar and more familiar with that Lightcast is an amalgamation of EMSI and Burning Glass, both of which have 20 years or so of history and track record of working with research organizations on these very topics. And so we thought it would be helpful to inspire the next strand of research if we showcased and brought together these examples. So Elena, welcome. Thank you for joining us, because you're the clever one in this webinar, obviously. And so you're going to help us kind of dig into a few of the examples, and I'll reference maybe some of the resources to help you learn more about the examples we talk about today, but also think about how we can also think about some of the others that we're not showcasing today, but I want to highlight to kind of encourage you to learn more. So we're going to kick off. We've got four examples, haven't we, today, that we're going to work through. And so we're going to kind of highlight a few examples from a range of different types of organizations, ranging from the intergovernmental global organizations through public policy and think tanks, research institutes, professional bodies, and academic research. But before we dig into those four examples, I wonder if you might kind of provide a bit of a summary overview for us, Eleanor, and kind of who are these organizations when we talk about intergovernmental organizations and think tanks. Is there anything that you think might be helpful for us to understand about the types of work generally these organizations do before we dive into those examples?
Thanks, Andy, for the introduction. And I think that's a really good question. And before I dive into actually answering this question about who are the people that we work with, I want to pause 1 second to just make clear that this is the work that we have done throughout many years as two different organizations, but also there are a lot of clever brains behind this. They are still at Lightcast, or they've moved on from Lightcast, but it's a joint effort of a group of very clever researchers and economists all across the organization, both outside the US, but also in the US as well. And so we are just trying to showcase a few examples here, but they don't really make justice to the wealth of resources that are available and the work that we have done with all these organizations. And to your point, Andy, who are these people that we work with? Who are these organizations? It's a wide range of stakeholders, and the common thread between these stakeholders is that they want to use data to inform policymaking. So they want to shape policy decision, be them at a local level, at a national level, or in an international context. So when we think about, for example, intergovernmental organization, public policy bodies, but also think tanks and research institutes, they all are drawn to the data because they have practical questions that need practical answers. So they really need to drive change in the local labor market or in a particular segment of the labor market, and they need data to inform the decision that they need to take. And this also applies to academic researchers. Even if we may think of them as a bit farther away from this policy discourse, they actually influence a lot of the policy debate through some groundbreaking and cutting-edge research, be that because they use new and innovative methods to look at some of the questions that policymakers look at, or because they take a completely different angles to approach these researches and topics. So a wide range of stakeholders. The example we have are truly global in nature, and the work that we have done is truly global in nature. We work with a lot of these stakeholders in the US space, in the UK, but also in Australia, or with international organizations right across Europe, right across the world. So it's a wide range of key decision makers right across the world.
Correct. No, thanks for that clarification. And yeah, it's quite humbling to think that the work that we're doing at Lightcast is enabling such important questions to be answered, pondered. It really is motivating to all of us here, certainly to think of the impact and the reach that these activities can have. So to that point, let's dig into to a few of those. As I say, I think we've highlighted here 4, but we have a large number actually on a resource I'll share with you a little later. But let's dive in and actually start to ask really what sort of questions are we enabling, and how are people leveraging data, Lightcast data, for their research. So we're going to kick off by talking about UNESCO here. So give us a little summary of the project that UNESCO have led on.
Yes, so this is probably one of the most recent publications that we've had on the research front. And it's a partnership with UNESCO that was led by Leila O'Kane, our research director in the US. And the research questions that this report explored was all around gender and job postings. So what is the impact of language in job postings on gender participation, and particular women participation in the labor market? So this is obviously quite important on an international level for a number of reasons, both in terms of equality and inclusion, which obviously is quite important right across the world, but also in terms of labor market challenges and shortages, because women labor market participation can help tap into some of the labor shortages and challenges that we've seen in labor markets across the world. But the questions that we've been discussing for a long time is whether the words that are being used in online job vacancies actually have an impact in getting different kind of people signing up and applying for these type of jobs. And so with this report, which looks at 6 countries, we try to code job words that are either more likely to be associated with the male gender or the female gender, and try to see whether having more of the masculine coded words or the female coded words actually has an impact on the labor market, and where we see these kind of words appearing the most in job postings. And one of the key findings here is that a number of words actually have an impact in affecting women's participation in the labor market, and we find the presence of highly masculine words in many job postings in several of the countries that we've analyzed, and this is negatively related to female employment. So the more male coded, masculine coded words that are in job postings are associated with lower participation in terms of female employer in those countries or in specific sectors. And going on to the sector point, job posting for certain particular occupation and sectors, in particular STEMs, so everything related to science, technology, and maths, for example, are much more likely to include male-dominated language. And this, again, has an impact because we hear it a lot in rhetorics, for example, in the UK, but also in other parts of the world, where we are trying to increase female participation in these important subjects. And on the flip side, instead, what we've seen is that the industries or the occupations where there are more feminine, female-related coded works tend to see a higher proportion of female employers, so or employees, not employers, in the sense that more female workers joining this particular sector of the workforce. And so this is quite an important topic in terms of helping shaping the debate around equality, diversity, and inclusion from a gender perspective, and also in terms of designing policies that can help increase participation of women in the labor market.
Fascinating, and yeah, definitely an interesting read. And it's to your point earlier, the labor markets around the world are being stressed and tightening. We speak a lot at Lightcast about the demographic drought that's being experienced across many parts of the world, where any which way in which we're shrinking the potential labor market is obviously limiting opportunity, but from kind of an access to the labor market perspective, and access to workforce. But of course, flip it around to the other side and think about the labor market as a real enabler to opportunity in society. If ultimately we can be more knowledgeable and avoid bias and creating bias in the system, we can, of course, increase opportunity for right across the board as well. So foundational on both sides of the coin, where there's a mutual gain to be had. So fantastic new insights to help hopefully sharpen and shape the way in which the labor market can function more effectively and inclusively there. So yeah, thanks for sharing that example. And moving on then to OECD.
We've done a lot of work with the OECD, so this is just one of the reports that we've picked, but the OECD uses our data in a number of ways to try and unpack different trends of the labor market. In particular, a lot of the things they've looked at recently are related to emerging trends in the labor market. So they want to help the countries that are part of the OECD trying to better understand and navigate these labor market changes so that they can design policies that can help make their workforce future ready and able to meet the latest trends in the labor market. This report in particular was published towards the first half of last year, so around March 2023, and looks at cybersecurity. So the whole workforce around cybersecurity, which is again an emerging field in the labor market, in the sense that it is a new field, is quite topical, is quite important at the moment. A lot of companies are recruiting for cybersecurity related roles. And the goal of this paper is to shed light on the specific skills needs of cybersecurity professionals. So what are employers looking for when they try to recruit for cybersecurity professionals? And then they've coupled this with insights from the supply side. So to try and understand how the demand from employers matches with the actual provision of skilled workers. And to try and understand a little bit more on the demand side, so what are employers asking, what is being sought after in terms of cybersecurity roles, the OECD used our data and they applied it for 5 countries in this context. So they were Australia, Canada, New Zealand, UK, and US. And they tried to basically see what kind of skills that were coming up related to these jobs. How has the demand for cybersecurity professional changed over time? And where we can find this type of jobs in the economy. And so just to give you a high level overview of the findings from the demand side, some of the things I found was that obviously the demand for cybersecurity professionals has been quite strong in recent years. It has experienced quite strong growth, and this growth has outpaced the wider growth that we have seen in the labor market. So we're not just seeing cybersecurity jobs growing, but they're growing faster than other parts of the labor market, highlighting strong demand in this segment of the labor market. Obviously, however, not all these cybersecurity professionals are found everywhere in the world in the same way or in the same with the same intensity. We actually see that the businesses that are looking for cybersecurity professionals are mostly concentrated in major urban areas across the different countries in the study, which kind of makes sense because the major urban areas are usually the headquarters of the big government departments or the big corporates, big companies that may be in need of this kind of professionals. And then, as the last aspect of this research was trying to understand the specific skills related to these jobs, obviously we could see that cybersecurity professionals need a wide range of skills, both common soft skills as well as technical skills, and in particular skills related obviously to threat assessment skills, as well as knowledge of all the different protocols and security frameworks that need to be applied in different scenarios, different security scenarios. And so then these findings were then matched with insights on the supply side, and also as part of the research there is a deep case study on the UK labor market, actually, and UK education provision in relation to cyber security, and with the idea being that the lessons taken from the UK can then be applied in different contexts, and as well there are also insights on the US that can then be applied in different contexts as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And a common example we find is, of course, at the bleeding edge, the cutting edge of the labor market. That's where a lot of this research is concentrated. And we've got a couple more examples to come that really do to kind of take us into similar territory. And of course, these are fast evolving aspects of the labor market, but we have to look quite deeply, and researchers have to look really quite deeply into the specifics of emergent labor markets, and of course, the more we can understand about the demand for skills, the more hopefully bodies like OECD can feed through their work with governments and with agencies to ensure that we're stimulating the supply to catch up, because we're relentlessly hearing, aren't we, that demand for these emergent skills, emergent technologies is fast outstripping supply, and that of course makes it hard to fill these roles. And while we can't fill these roles, where companies are exposed, governments are exposed to major cyber issues. Don't we know at Lightcast we've experienced a few challenges in our time, and it's a common threat, either state sponsored or just cyber criminals driving thing and identifying weaknesses in the system. So the more we can illuminate what's happening and where the need is, the more hopefully we can get the solution in place around the world to kind of solve for that problem.
Yeah, and that reminds me, Andy, of like one thing that I should have said to begin with for both this report and the previous one is that what kind of data are we using here? And it's job postings data. And why am I saying this right now after what you mentioned? Because these are quite quick, rapid changes in the labor market, things that are emerging. They're not yet very clear what they're about and how they will evolve. And so data on these kind of topics is not always available through official statistics. And therefore, being able to have this data set that can provide a different labor market that is almost real time, that comes directly from the source, from the employers, help track these changes before we can actually see them in official statistics, helping countries being ahead of the game in terms of setting policies that can really drive change.
Incredible point. Thanks for making that one. So we're heading into Europe now, more specifically, and a long-term relationship of ours with CEDEFOP, one of the agencies of the European Union. Tell us a little bit about our work in that realm.
Yes, so this is actually a research project that we've done for a joint CEDEFOP and OECD symposium, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But you're totally right, Andy. We have been working with CEDEFOP for multiple years, and our team, led by Mauro Pelucchi in Italy, has been at the forefront of all the work that CEDEFOP has been doing. And as part of that, we were invited last year to contribute to a research publication on the impact that the digital transformation is having on apprenticeship provision. So the policymakers and the OECD and CEDEFOP in this context were keen to understand a little bit more what has been the impact of digitalization in the education provision for technical education courses related to apprenticeships, and what it means in practice, and what can education providers do in the real world about these changes. And so what we did for them was, again, try to investigate our job postings data to provide specific insights on three different segments of the labor market that are naturally more popular in terms of apprenticeship provision. Those were healthcare, manufacturing, and construction. And so what we did was we took job postings data for 5 different European countries: Italy, Spain, Germany, France, and the UK. And what we tried to see was how much employers were talking about digital skills in a number of occupations that tend to have a high share of workers getting into the sector via an apprenticeship route. And so by doing so, we found a number of very interesting trends that are happening in the labor market, starting from perhaps stating the obvious for one second. Digital skills are really propping up and they're becoming more and more important in the labor market. But while we all knew that, what we did in this paper was to try and understand what type of skills, what are the dynamics in different parts of the labor market, because every sector has different requirements when it comes to digital skills, and also what then does this mean in practice. So in terms of the first kind of findings, we saw that demand for digital skills is increasing in each of the labor market that we have analyzed, but that is also becoming more important in sectors that traditionally were less likely to require digital skills. Healthcare, for example, digital is not exactly the first thing that comes to mind. The healthcare sector is typically a people-centric sector in which you need to have a lot of technical knowledge around specific health-related fields, as well as the ability to work with people, work with the patients. But we are seeing that even within this context, digital skills are becoming more and more important. We are seeing, for example, that a number of operating systems are now essential for the functioning of the healthcare sector, as well as basic digital skills more in general, to be able to read data online and access data online. So digital skills are on the rise, not just in some parts of the labor market, but overall also in parts of the labor market that didn't need it before. The other thing that that emerged from this research was that the type of skills, digital skills that employers mention, really is changing fast. Digital skills that are now becoming so important that they need to be taught right across the spectrum, regardless of the sector that we are talking about, but also that the specific digital skills beyond this basic level of skills are changing so fast that perhaps flexibility and ability to learn quickly are skills that students and then workers also need as much as the specific digital skills, as well as the fact that the skills are changing so fast means that by the time you start an education course, the skills that you are learning might not be the one that you need in the labor market. So this really highlights the importance of lifelong learning and continuous education, and also piecemeal education provision, for example, in terms of micro-credentialing.
Fascinating, and particularly thinking about the digitalization of the wider economy, and making sure that gets understood right throughout the economy to feed into education design, particularly at the vocational education end of things. So we're now going to dive into the world of think tanks. So tell us a little bit about our work with Bruegel.
Yes, so this is again another good example of how job postings data can help track some of the emerging trends in the labor market, this time looking across 27 different countries, all the 27 EU member states. And the research question here is around the twin transition of green and AI. So the goal of this dashboard, which is publicly available to all the users on Bruegel's website, is to showcase the change over time in demand for green and AI related skills in online job vacancies in these 27 different countries. It shows in which part of Europe the demand for these different skills is higher, the type of occupations where these skills are being most sought after, and also the specific skills that are being required by employers. Unlike the other three different examples that are static in the sense that they are, let's call them old school reports, PDF reports that you can download and just have a read through. This is an interactive dashboard. As I said, it lives on the Bruegel's website. But it's not just interactive in the sense that you can play around with it, but also that is regularly updated. So it helps you monitor labor market changes throughout time and how these different trends are shaping up the labor market in the over time. Obviously, again, in terms of what does it show, what are some of the key findings? Share of job postings requiring AI and green skills are both growing fast over time, and but the sectors and the countries in Europe in which these skills are being most sought after are different. On a Greens perspective, this is particularly important and has some interesting policy implications. For example, if we think about the green transition, there are new jobs that are being demanded and created, but there are also so-called brown jobs that are going to be phased out because of this green transition. And oftentimes, the brown jobs and the green jobs are not found in the same place. So it means how do we make sure that the policy can respond to this type of challenge, and how can we link the people in the sectors that are kind of like declining or being phased out to the jobs of the future in the green transition? And so to that point, having a very clear idea of the specific AI and green skills that are being mentioned by businesses in different contexts, in different countries, can be really helpful from an education provision perspective, because it can help align education provision to the latest needs of employers in that specific area. And so again, this is a nice example of using job postings data to track change over time and track some of the emerging trends that are coming up in the labor market.
Super, thank you for sharing that. It raises a couple of interesting points. We talked to, I mentioned earlier, the mission we're on to unlock new possibilities in the labor market, and the importance of therefore understanding what's emerging, where is the labor market heading. But it's easy to forget that we've got to think about how we take people from those areas of the labor market that maybe are heading in a different direction, and understand what the transition looks like, how portable those skills can be as we go. So there are flip sides to new possibilities, which is sometimes older aspects are in decline, and so those are two key important dimensions that need to be considered at the same time. And this is an interesting example. A lot of that, when we look at supporting colleagues in undertaking this kind of research, it often has a very narrow lens, a real focus on a particular emergent aspect or theme. But this is quite fascinating to me, seeing how green and AI have been kind of twinned, as mentioned here, to think about the commonality there, that labor markets don't just evolve in a linear specific fashion. They're fully intertwined, and so being able to showcase those two dimensions to think about what's common there is also a really fascinating approach from Bruegel. So yeah, no, fascinating.
The other thing to add here is that it's not just that job postings data help you track these emerging trends, but when it comes to things like green, for example, AI is a different kind of situation. But when we talk about green, if you talk to many different stakeholders, they all have different views of what green means and what it entails and what it includes. And there is no official definition out there of what green jobs are, partly also because there isn't very granular data to showcase what green jobs are. And so by combining this approach of job postings with skills, we are able to create work in progress definition of green that can be used by policymakers while they see how the lay of the land is developing and they develop their own official definitions of something like green.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Thank you very much. So those were the examples. I appreciate your additional insights there, Elena. Thank you very much. These are just some of the examples that we're calling out. But as we think about maybe our audience today who might be in the research community or engaged with it, let's think more generally about how we might kind of inspire people to think about these types of. So we got some great examples. What are the typical themes then, just to round this off, are we seeing from the research community, and what advice or ideas do you have? And of course, if you are out there and you're undertaking this kind of research, we'll be delighted to connect with you. But let's inspire our audience, Helena. Let's share some ideas and thoughts as to how they might further the research agenda as it relates to the labor market using data like Lightcast.
So it's a really good questions to conclude on, Andy. And actually, I'd like to start my answer by linking back to something that you just said earlier about what you can and cannot do with job postings data. Because, as you nicely explained earlier, there are a lot of things that you can do with the job postings data to track the almost the future, the very real-time element of what's happening to the labor market. But job postings data is not something that you use to quantify the number of jobs in an area. And so what we're trying to do here with these concluding slides is to try and focus on what are the kind of research questions that we see most typically answered by job postings data, or where we see job postings data actually adding the most value. And one area where undoubtedly job postings data offers an advantage that no other data offers is that of skills foresight. We have worked with a number of professional bodies, organizations, and trade associations both in the US and across the world, mentioning just a few from a UK context, the likes of Engineering UK, the Royal Society of Chemistry, CINSPA, that all wanted to understand what is the lay of the land for them in terms of skills needs. They represent businesses for a specific sector or segment of the labor market, and they want to make sure that these businesses have the skilled workers that they need to be successful and to be productive and to continue to grow. And so for them, it is essential not just to understand how many jobs there are out there for their profession. They need to understand the specific skills that employers talk about. And obviously, of course, you could do that through a survey. Maybe get 500 responses, 1,000 if you're lucky, to get some insights on these skills demand from employers. But job postings offer you this big data set with all the information that employers actually put specifically on the job ad, on the job description for specific roles. And so that helps really understand what are the emerging trends and the specific skills needs of a specific segment of the labor market. And is quite useful then to use these insights to engage with policymakers, both in terms of shaping the policy agenda of a national government, but also shaping education provision so that it aligns with the specific needs of the sector that these professional bodies represent. Then a second area, and this is kind of like what we touched upon with most of the examples today, and there are even more, is that of capturing emerging trends in the labor market. Think tanks, research institutes, and academics are often, most of the time, at the cutting edge of innovation. They want to know what is the next thing, what is coming next, what is the most important thing that's happening in the labor market. And official statistics, for their very definition, for what they are set out to do, are not able to capture quick changes in the labor market. If we think about the pandemic, for example, if we think for happening in the labor market, and official statistics weren't quick enough to provide updates on what was happening there, job postings data could. And so thanks to that kind of data, we were able to track what was happening week by week, almost day by day in the labor market. And then lastly, emerging markets. The data we collect doesn't just come from the US or the UK. We have data on over 100 countries right across the world. And the quality of the data obviously varies from one country to another, and it depends on a number of different factors, also including the level of maturity of the online labor market in different countries. Nevertheless, even in places where the quality of the data may be a little bit different and lower compared to the US and the UK, this type of data can fill the gap of missing or lagged official statistics. So if we think about a lot of the emerging markets, think about South America or Southeast Asia or India, for example, there are markets that are growing really, really fast, where there is a lot of change happening, but official statistics are either very lagged, even more than in other countries, or they're not really there. And so job postings data can help us fill this gap and give us an idea of, at least partial idea, of what is happening in the labor market of these countries. And we have done work with the like of the World Bank and others to explore countries outside in emerging markets, and also with CEDEFOP and the ETF in Europe as well, so also in the African context. So that is also something that we can do with this type of data.
Thank you, Elena. That's really helpful, and hopefully has inspired viewers to kind of understand where the opportunity lies to really kind of break new ground in understanding key labor market trends. And if anything here that you've heard is has piqued your interest, then there's a lot more at this research. We've actually built a website that we'll send you a link for, and you can see on the screen there where you can look at those 4 examples that we've picked out. They had a distinctly European feel to them, but actually we've got examples from Australia, from America, from Japan, and a number of other places, nearly 20 different examples that link through to the actual research itself. So if you want to find out more, play with the Bruegel dashboard, read the OECD reports and UNESCO reports, then you can access that through the website. So thank you for illuminating just a few of those examples, but feel free to head there to learn more. And we've heard a lot about skills. We talk a lot about skills. It is really the detailed building blocks to understanding how labor markets are changing, particularly if you're looking at the emerging trends. That's the place to look. And a reminder that we've had a resource available for some time now, and again we will link through there, but it's a fantastic resource to help understand what the emergent trends in 2024 look like at the skills level, across key labor markets around the world. So encourage you to check that out. And as we send you a follow-up to this webinar, you should have links to that as we go. So we hope that this has inspired you to think about ways in which you can leverage data to better understand what's happening in the labor market, and to help us in our collective mission to really unlock new possibilities and leverage the opportunities that are coming down the line, manage our way through the threats and the risks as we go. And I just want to say a massive thank you to the research community that we work very closely with for really breaking new ground and helping us collectively to find new ways to unlock those opportunities. So thank you, Elena, for joining us today. I know the reception was a bit spotty where you are, so apologies for any issues there, but really appreciate you sharing those insights. And keep an eye out for the email, everyone, and feel free to reach out if you think we can help you with your project. Thank you very much.